Let's go. Okay. All right. Okay. Holiday in RI. Yep. And it is. What a beautiful VJ day. My goodness. We are live. Yes, yes, yes. Yep. No question about it. Yep. What a beautiful day. Yes. Folks, God is good. Good afternoon, one and all. 12:03. Yes, we will be live tonight. Little road patrol action. It's coming later. Yes. Yes, indeed. It's kind of an odd holiday, as you know. A lot of people are off. Many people are not off for whatever reason. There's Danielle. Good afternoon, Danielle. J&B Plumbing. There's Chris Moran. Hola. There's Jonna. There's Lynn Miller, who continues to lead the charge in the East Bay. And thank you, Chris Moran, and not fall to the fact, this movement to get rid of VJ Day. It's not happening, folks. No, that's the progressive left that want to do that. Tierra Mac, they want to get rid of it. We say no. All right, we're live in just 3 minutes. It was quite the experience being at the Dominican Festival. The Dominican Festival. Last night. Yes, that was last night. All right, we're live in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Oh, my goodness. This is brutal. Brutal. Trump campaign has got to turn it around. I'm going to talk about it. I have to. Folks, we have to. She is a flip-flop. She absolutely is. The only state in the country to celebrate it. Yep. Is RI. All right, we're 1 minute out. You know, the New York Post is trying. I like that headline with the chameleon. She is. But like enough of the Trump campaign need to change things up. Because if they continue down this path, this does not seem positive. So it's winnable. It's a very winnable election. I think we all agree on that. All right, we're 1 minute out. Now, we are going to be live tonight, although it's not lost on me. President Trump is doing an interview with Elon Musk. But in the past, when they've done those types of things, they have a lot of problems. I don't mean that in a good way. All right, we're live in just a moment. Have a number of different problems. Because it's a lot to try to pull off. Goodness, what a weather forecast. And we are live at 12:06. 12:06 on this happy victory over Japan Day. Folks, the one of the few things that Rhode Island still does right, and that is the celebration of the victory of Japan. So depending on where you're watching, and again, we're on the radio, obviously, AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. You can also listen online at the website, which is depetro.com. Now, we're also live, as a matter of fact, right now on X, where Elon Musk is going to interview President Trump tonight on the platform. I'm just suggesting so many people may watch it that in the past they've run into some problems. Hopefully that will not be the case. Then we're also live on YouTube. So, folks, this portion of our program on this VJ Day, and I want to wish on this Monday, August 12th, a very happy Victory over Japan Day. Remember, for those that complain about Hiroshima, Nagasaki, there wouldn't have been that if you didn't have Pearl Harbor. So we were the ones that was attacked. We were the ones that had the right to defend ourselves. And that was the only way. Well, I know now there's been some controversy that there was maybe another way to end the war. But nonetheless, it certainly then ended the war. This portion of the program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, this is a 10-10 top-down Chamber of Commerce Blue Sky Monday. And maybe if you're going down to the South County area, pop by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Locally sourced vegetables, sweet corn, native tomatoes, they have it all. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, where they also have annuals, perennials, trees and shrubs, hanging pots, hanging impatiens, large selection of beautiful patio pots. But right now, they are all things in delicious vegetables, whether it's sweet corn, native tomatoes, you name it. Folks, the original, the best, family-run business. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, check out the website, dpetro.com. Remember, that's how you can get in touch with me. That's how we also have links to our various social media. And that's also where we post exclusive stories and videos. We have some new ones going up either today or tomorrow. And it's all brought to you by the Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge, and or the market at Cohasset, the Cohasset Inn. So it is a beautiful Monday. And I'm going to have video up that I was in Providence earlier this morning, and I filmed around the parade route. Now, I want to give credit to the city. It looked much better than it had looked in years past. Much better. But nonetheless, still a lot of garbage left out. And so you can look forward to that later. But by and large, there was a huge number of people in Providence last night. And if you watched Road Patrol, Providence Police had a strong presence. And by all accounts, you have a lot of people, you have a lot of drinking. It all seemingly was successful. But I do want to talk about and start off the presidential race. And like many of you, if you want to be honest about it, if you want to be objective about it, not everyone does, by the way. Not everyone does. And I wouldn't say there's no reason to panic. But I would argue that it is certainly, and I think some people may agree, that you got to decide. There's several things that I believe that they have to decide. And one thing is, are you going to just keep complaining, or are you going to go out and win? There are, members of the media. The Washington Post was talking about the fact that Vice President Harris, there's a big difference between just winning a campaign, winning a race, winning an election, and then actually governing. So I recognize the Trump people, Trump campaign. I fully get it. They are very upset. They thought they were going to face President Biden, even though I want to give credit. Nikki Haley, she said during the primary that she didn't think Biden was going to be the nominee. She was right. Biden basically did an interview yesterday. I played it on the radio show last hour on CBS where he said they pushed him out saying that he was going to hurt the down ballot races. Now, by the way, if you saw any of the interview, and I know a lot of people say, I wouldn't waste my, it's worth seeing because he's still the president. You don't have to watch the whole thing. He can't do the interview live, and he can't do it without note cards. He had index cards with him, and he had to keep looking at them. So this is still the leader of the free world. You want to talk about no energy. I mean, he's not even hiding anymore. And what's interesting is we haven't seen him since he had that Oval Office address announcing he was going to run for re-election. He's failing even more now. So, I mean, this was CBS. You would think they would have him rested, right? Energetic. It's a taped interview. You think I'm just, I don't know, pump him up with coffee a little bit. He is really failing. My God, if he were a relative, if the president were a relative, and you went and saw whoever, whether it's a grandfather or an uncle or a great uncle, whoever, but you would say, oh wow, he's like really failing. I mean, he comes off as someone that, I don't know how much longer. I'm not saying he's on, his deathbed, but I mean, no, not even attempted energy in any way. So, and that's with CBS agreeing to not going live. And then he doesn't even hide. He's waving the cards and has to keep reading the answers. But nonetheless, he's not the nominee. And the Trump campaign needs to pivot to the fact that she's the nominee. And let me just say this. Did Kamala Harris steal the Trump issue, of which the media was talking about and have, at least that I saw, and that was Nevada is an important state, and President Trump said about no tax on tips. And so Kamala Harris has come in and grabbed it, said, boy, that sounds good to me, and threw it out at a rally, and the place exploded. So now, listen, I heard that this isn't, now see, to me, that's politics. It's not, I mean, if someone wants to argue plagiarism, she's going to pick and choose things. Her goal is to win the election. Her goal is to win the election. If you go back to the mid-90s, Bill Clinton adopted the contract with America. He adopted that, and when it would pass, he took credit for everything. He went to the middle, meaning President Clinton. So, I mean, to me, that's politics. If you're in a race and you're losing, and suddenly you see a couple of issues that your opponent's doing well on, this could be a race for mayor. This could be a race for governor. It could be a race for president. They say, hey, that sounds good to me. Who really invented it? Who really came up with that? President Trump with Build the Wall. I mean, I've interviewed Congressman Tom Tancredo. He was one of the original people that talked about immigration. There have been a lot of people that talked about immigration. President Trump really put it in action with the building of the wall and made it a core issue for him. But if you start arguing about that, to me, I want to come back to, there's several different thoughts I have. J.D. Vance was all over the Sunday news shows that I watch all of. I don't get that. Where is, and this comes down to the campaign. Where is Governor DeSantis? Where is the governor of Virginia? Governor Glenn Youngkin? Where is Senator Tim Scott? I did see the governor of North Dakota on a show earlier in the week, though, actually on CNN, Governor Bergen. But where's DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott? I believe they need to flood the airwaves, much like when you saw them at the Republican National Convention. Suddenly, it's just J.D. Vance. And in every interview, he's defending the country is run by childless cat ladies, which I understood, with what he is saying, he's not entirely wrong, but they just take that. I think it's also interesting, did President Trump know about that before he selected him? But let me be very clear. J.D. Vance is not the problem here. This is going to come down to the candidate. This is going to be President Trump. President Trump has to decide whether he's going to adjust his strategy and point out and make the case for where he is different on issues than Harris Walz. And let me be very clear. Harris Walz getting into office, I want to be crystal clear about this, folks, and I'm not exaggerating. It would be a disaster, and it would be the end of the country as we know it. I can't even imagine voting for these two people. Harris, as Donna Perry has said, she is a creation. And she is right now, the campaign, she's not doing any interviews. Look at the way they're choreographing the crowds. And all I hear are the Trump people complaining about it. But you're not getting votes if you're complaining. I'm going to go back to sports. If I can't stand people that are always complaining about the refs because it just always seems to me like an easy excuse. Either you're going to win the game or you're going to lose the game. And I don't know whether or not, and this is, I'm not panicked, but I'm going to deal in reality. I don't like some of the stories that I'm seeing. President Trump saying he doesn't believe the polls. Well, Biden was saying that. Now, I don't know what their internal polls are. For those of you, and there are people that say, well, I don't believe any of the polls. Well, I can tell you that in 2016, the Trump campaign internal polling won him the election because they saw the path to victory. Your internal polling projects which states to go into. And then they saw it and set him off on the path of how he won 2016. So I can tell you, they believe their internal polls. And if you don't have good internal polling, which I don't believe, I think they have great internal polling. So maybe President Trump is saying he doesn't believe some of the national polls. And the national polls, actually, I agree, they don't mean anything because New York and California overly weigh on that. But I can tell you, he can't dismiss if they have internal polls. But what I see as someone, and I want to be very clear, I would vote for Kennedy before I'd vote for Harris. I would never vote for Harris Walz. Never. Much like I would never vote for McKee and Matos. Never. I would then I would be the type, then I wouldn't vote. But I would never vote for those frauds. I would never vote for Harris. She's not a real person. She doesn't believe in anything. She is kind of along for the ride on this. She has obviously some campaign people that are saying we're going to have a script and you're this magical person and you're a female Obama and that's the way we're going to craft it. And part of that includes, that's why there's no interviews. And I know people, JD Vance is saying, I want you to note, I'm coming on here and Harris won't. And she's not going to, because right now they're just trying to win the election. They're not trying to win it on the merits. They're just trying to win it on the whole campaign. Look at the way they presented the governor of Minnesota, when now they even have Senator Jack Reed going out on national television trying to defend him. Was he a coach? Yeah, he was a linebacker coach, but he wasn't the head coach. Did he have military experience? Yes, but he also exaggerated it, embellished it, and lied and bailed on them. So there's a lot of different things like this. This guy is a different version of Bernie Sanders. That's who he is. So, of course, Governor McKee and the rest of them are falling over. But if you don't highlight the difference, and I want to say this about President Trump, every time you're just saying crazy Kamala and liberal Kamala, you're not threading the needle on where you're different. She doesn't have her platform is the Biden platform. Her ideas are basically the Biden ideas, which, I mean, I don't know any realistic person that would right now say the country's on the right path. But the Trump campaign, one of the problems I have with it, it's so doom and gloom. I really wish, and I don't know if this can happen, by the way, folks. Remember, I'm a realist. I deal in reality. There are these people, I see them online. Maybe President Trump will come to Rhode Island. Listen, at this point, President Trump can't afford to come to Rhode Island. President Trump, did he ever visit Rhode Island? Yes, we know about that. April 2016, day before the presidential primary, a day I will remember forever. I was so privileged and so glad I got to be such a big part of that. And it was just one of those days. It was an amazing day. But he was also 69. He's 77. That was 8 years ago. He's not campaigning a lot. I'm not saying I agree with it, by the way. I kind of get the sense that he feels, all right, I'm going to stay at Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster, and I'm going to just do interviews from here, and then we're going to send JD Vance out on the trail. There's a world of difference, and you see it. Does JD Vance get a crowd? Yes, but it's not the same. So I think a couple things. Number one, I think President Trump, he may not like it. He may say, I would think would be interesting. He may say, I shouldn't have to. But guess what? You have to. You have to. If he wants to win, he's got to write. I mean, there are 3 states right now that they're tracking: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. So now my whole thing, and I want to address it, because we had Sheriff Tom Hodgson on that talked about trying to bring President Trump into Massachusetts. Nothing against the sheriff. Not sure I fully believe that, unless, Boston might have some really wealthy donors and they could they could do a big haul there. You're not going to get the same type of haul if he were to come to Rhode Island. The only reason to come would not to do, I know people would like a rally. Remember, this isn't about you. It's about him winning. And I want to repeat that. It's not about you. It's about him winning. I hear a lot of people, I would like him to come. It's not about you. It's about him winning. Before he comes to Rhode Island, maybe he would. Maybe he would come into Boston and do some kind of fundraiser with Sheriff Tom Hodgson. And maybe he would do that again because of if there were some very wealthy individuals on Nantucket or the Vineyard or Wellesley or Weston or downtown Boston that would make it worth his while. But I don't know. But here's the thing, this whole business of whether or not he would come into Rhode Island. Here's the thing, if you're the Trump campaign, do you go to Rhode Island or do you go to North Carolina? Do you go to Rhode Island or do you go to Arizona? Do you do a visit in Rhode Island or do you go to Nevada? There are states that he needs to make sure that he's going to win. And the states that he's looking to win are the state North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, maybe Virginia, maybe Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all in play, all very important states. So every time that someone talks about that, you're way back on the list. You're not a battleground state. You're not a state that is seen in play. And therefore, it is imperative that he win those states. Imperative that he win those states. And the other thing I'll say about the Trump campaign that gets me a little uncomfortable is I wish, and again, I don't know if this can happen because the candidate is the candidate. There was an article over the weekend where there was some donors, I think in the Hamptons, and they were meeting with President Trump, and he basically was like, I am who I am. It's going to be win or lose. I am who I am. So I wish I wish he would, and I've said this in the past, but President Reagan painted a rosy picture. Reagan talked about how he viewed America, morning in America. Reagan preached and campaigned off optimism. And I am encouraged that President Trump is running an ad. Ask yourself a question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? But at the same time, here's my point. It can't be all doom and gloom. It can't be they're destroying our country. It can't be they rip off the election. It can't be blah, blah, blah. I mean, I believe, could our economy better? Yes. And his policies on the economy proved to be very fruitful. The states that are thriving are Republican-led states, and it's not by accident. Hear me out. Look at the states. What are the states that are thriving right now? Florida, Governor DeSantis. Texas, Governor Abbott. Tennessee, how many people do you know are moving to Tennessee? How many people you hear moving to South Carolina? Texas is remarkable. Tennessee, Florida, the Carolinas, even though North Carolina has a Democrat governor. So in Kentucky, actually, I was surprised, has a Democrat governor. But the states, what are the states that are failing? New York, Democrat governor. New Jersey, Democrat governor. California, Democrat governor. All failing. Look at Oregon. Look at the Pacific Northwest and how insane, those areas have become. Then you have the triangle. Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, all struggling. The worst, obviously, under Governor McKee, Rhode Island. So What I'm saying is, I believe President Trump, who can be very funny, hilarious, as a matter of fact, and has had success. I believe the doom and gloom, and these people are ruining the country, and they're stealing elections, you know, it is such a crime. The number of people in our country that die from fentanyl. It is a crime. It is. But I don't hear anything changing under Biden and Harris. Nothing has changed. The fact that they're able to smuggle in that poison and somebody pops a pill or does a little toot or smokes or whatever, and it's laced with fentanyl and they're gone. Granted, some of it maybe shoot up, but a lot of it's just spiked with that. It's such a crime. Why would we even tolerate that? The amount of young people, the amount of Americans that have died from something that, again, I'm not condoning illicit drug use, but there's a huge difference between someone's at a party or in a nightclub and they decide to do a little something extra and they get a little high or very high or whatever, and someone, boom, dead. I mean, the fact that, and there's been no change to the policy in that, it is criminal. So, folks, this portion of our program, I want to tell you someone who I admire, and it is my friend Paul at Volare Motors. Paul Stackavich and his mechanic, Steven. If you're in the market right now, if you've been thinking of getting a better vehicle, maybe you want to trade in a vehicle, Volare Motors. Now, remember, they specialize Volvo sales and service, quality pre-owned vehicles, largest selection of Volvos in Rhode Island. Where are they located? Right in the heart of Cranston, right in the heart of the state, 1003 Park Avenue in Cranston. Volare Motors, New England's #1 dealer in pre-owned Volvo sales and service. 27 years of specialized Volvo sales and service, pre-owned, plus the service is phenomenal. You can call them 401-942-9568. Look for them online, and you can also find them on Facebook, but online, Volare, Volare Motors.com, or better yet, pop in and see them, Volare Motors. Well, folks, good afternoon. On this VJ Day, you're listening to the John DePietro Show. It's AM 1380, 99.9 FM. Also, just a quick reminder, Donald sent me an email. Donald is thinking of getting a new fence. I don't know, I think a storm knocked down the fence he had. He heard me discussing a fence company, and Donald reached out to me and said, could you refer me to the company you're referring to? Donald, you want to contact FenceRI.com, FenceRI.com, 401-732-0555, FenceRI.com, the premier fence and deck contractor. A deck will change your life. By the way, I have maintained they have the best logo. It's FenceRI.com with a fence over the Ocean State. Remember, $200 discount if you mention our show. Wood deck construction, they're licensed and insured, 5-star rating with Google. It's FenceRI.com, whether it's for pool fencing. Maybe it's because you're getting a pet. Maybe you just want to have the security protection of or privacy of your yard or your commercial business. FenceRI.com. $200 off, 401-732-0555. Give them the chance to pitch your business. Give them the chance to earn your business. FenceRI.com. So now it's a matter of right now, and let's be objective on the race for president, which is obviously so important. A week from today is the Democrat convention taking place in Chicago. So right now, what do you have? It was President Trump against President Biden, and Biden backs out. And Vice President Harris, has she sat down and done long interviews? No. How is she she's out every day. And, I think it's a nervous cackle, but it's like fun, and they're getting crowds, or they're giving the appearance of crowds in Atlanta. I said that, and President Trump was right. They had performers that Megan Thee Stallion go out, but they, I don't know if they fill the arena. I'll say this. Listen, she's drawing more people than Biden would draw. She's got her VP choice, which is the governor of Minnesota, Walz. I think it's interesting in some of the talk. They were concerned about the governor of Pennsylvania, that Governor Shapiro is all about Governor Shapiro. But what's really remarkable is the fact that in the Democrat Party in 2024, Josh Shapiro is, quote, too Jewish for the ticket. I mean, that is striking. But this guy, the governor of Minnesota, who allowed his state to be destroyed in 2020 and allowed Minneapolis to be destroyed, and as they have said, he gave them the matches to ignite the fires and riots, and then Harris bailed them out. That's how they have to be framed. There's a number of people out there that don't like President Trump. They don't like President Trump for different reasons, and they won't vote for President Trump. They were maybe not going to vote for Biden. Maybe they weren't going to vote. But right now, the doom and gloom must end. I believe President Trump, talk about what the economy could be. Talk about how if we were self-sufficient with energy, and this whole business that everyone's going to drive an electric vehicle, it's false. Folks, look at, for instance, Governor McKee right now is saying novenas at night that Harris and Walz win, or otherwise it is over for someone like a Governor McKee. He's incapable of governing. He is incompetent. He's not the right person for the job. He is running the state into the ground. Do you know already, so the fiscal year, the new budget year for Rhode Island just started July 1st, and then it ends next July. Already, they're in a $300 million deficit. And there's no guarantee that the federal government's going to pay for this bridge, of which he's incapable of getting someone to build. So, I mean, but that is Harris. Is she doing serious interviews? Is she introducing policy? No, she's floating around and she's having fun and laughing. And they have people at the rally. And then she has Walz up on stage and he attacks Vance and Trump. And they're flipping the script. And all I would suggest is, President Trump is like yelling at the refs. This isn't fair and blah, blah, blah. And I thought I had Biden. And you don't have Biden. You got to pivot. Lay out the ideas. And it doesn't have to be 5 of them. But the economy is still wildly important. President Trump did very, very well managing the economy. That's a fact. He's very good at it. He's skilled. He had good people. He would be better handling the economy than her. That's going to be highlighted. Number 2, everybody is concerned about the border. Talk about, you can't just say they're letting them in. I would like to hear what the country could be like and what our quality of life could be like if we didn't have this. I've also said, I don't think they frame it well about the mass deportations. And what do I mean by that? I don't hear anyone talk about the cost that we have to pay, that you have to pay for illegal immigration, just to educate the students in the public schools around the state. It's well over $1 billion. It's well over $1 billion. How many times, if you're watching Road Patrol, they need a Spanish-speaking officer at the scene? It costs more for safety. It costs more in our emergency rooms. It's a huge cost. What no one talks about, and whether it's President Trump or certainly not locally, by the way, what no one talks about is the cost that you're expected to pick up. And that's from McKee and Matos. You have to pay that these people go to the emergency room and don't have any insurance. You have to pay that he gave them driving privileges and, they're not even all fully insured. They shouldn't even be driving in the first place. You have to pay for them to live in Section 8 housing. You have to pay all of the meals and for them to be educated. Here's my question. Why do you have to pay? We're not talking about American citizens that are in poverty. These are people, and I want to be very clear, you don't owe them anything. You don't owe them anything. I'm not saying there aren't companies that need foreign workers, but there's got to be a program to it. There's got to be a rhyme and reason to it. I don't hear it. I want to repeat the doom and gloom of the Trump campaign. It's got to switch. He's not exuding that things are going to be great and why they're going to be great. And she may just one by one, Harris, she may one by one pick off many of his policies. And I watched this week with Stephanopoulos, even though he wasn't the host. He's normally even not the host anymore. It's either Martha Raddatz or it's Jonathan Karl. But Jonathan Karl was even saying, I mean, she stole his, listen, she's going to steal more. And what is he going to do about it, though? See, that tells me it's not framed enough. It tells me that the voters are not saying, hey, wait a minute, why have the tribute when you can have the real thing? But I'm not surprised about it, though, because she doesn't have any ideas. So don't be surprised. Kamala Harris, the VP, she gave a speech where she now refers to California as a border state and said, as attorney, when she was district attorney general of California, and a prosecutor, we used to go after some of these people coming in. Suddenly now she's like hard line. And we're going to put tougher border policies. Where did this come from? Gee, I wonder which voters she's going for. They're not ignoring that a lot of independent voters are worried about that. So now again, would I vote for that person? No. But that tells me that the Trump campaign, they have to frame their policy differences. And I don't think there's a lot of them. I don't think you need 10. I think you just need a couple, but you have to frame them with optimism. Folks, this Race for the White House 2024 update is brought to you by Propane Plus. Call them today in Rhode Island, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359. Propane Plus for heating and cooling. They have a great website. It's propaneplus.com. You just type in your zip code, residential, commercial. They do it all. It's Propane Plus. Well, folks, good afternoon on this VJ Day. And I'm very glad for the economy down in South County. The economy, anyone that benefits from the warm weather, because last week was a rough week. I'm glad about that. And I also want to mention Rhode Island schools, I believe, should go back to school after Labor Day. I think they should. Because that final week of summer and Labor Day weekend used to be an extra big week for all the beaches. And now they all go back to school beforehand. And I don't think that that's business friendly. And I think that the businesses down in the southern part of the state could certainly benefit from that. Now, I also want to touch on this business of President Trump in Rhode Island. I'm just telling you, I'm not... you don't hear, and I want to explain why. You don't hear anyone from the Rhode Island Republican Party that is saying that are out there really campaigning on behalf of President Trump. Nothing. You don't see them doing interviews on behalf of the campaign. Because someone sent me a message, do you think he would come in and that type of thing? Again, as someone that I like to deal in reality, I like to live in reality. This whole business, it would take a real concerted effort in order to even make a serious. There's no guarantee on that, by the way. I still don't think that's happening. You're not going to see him campaigning necessarily in Florida or Texas or South Carolina or Alabama. He doesn't have to. He's going to win those states. He needs to win the battleground states. It should be pointed out, and I think it was Ted Nesi that pointed out, so Waltz is coming in to treat Rhode Island like an ATM machine this Thursday. Time to be announced, address upon somewhere in Newport. And here's who's on the committee: Governor Dan McKee, Senator Jack Reed, Senator Whitehouse, Magaziner, Amo, Joe Sacacci, Joe Paolino, Art Solomon, Donato Bianco, Mark Cristofili, Pat Crowley, Helena Foulkes, Michael Sabatoni, Don Schweitzer, the Democrat chair, Liz Perrick, and the old man, Armin Sabatoni. So 1, 2, 3 big laborers. And so what stands out? Notice who's not on the list mentioned. Matos. Matos is nowhere mentioned on this. So nowhere mention of the lieutenant governor. As a matter of fact, the only mention is of two women. How come that is not highlighted more with our local media? Why? How come if that were Republicans, they would be highlighting that? Her name is nowhere. Her name is not even part of this. So the state makes it very clear that, oh, all right, President Trump, his first tweet since August of last year. I didn't realize that. So he's back on X. Wow. Okay. Now he usually would use Truth Social, but this is the first time that he's starting to use his Twitter account. So, and I'm glad to see that. So we used it last August, and then now he's active like that. Are you better off now than you were when I was president? You could just say 4 years ago. The economy is shattered, borders erased, nation in decline, make the American dream affordable again, make America safe again. This is a winnable election. And I also want to be very clear that leading up to this, the Trump campaign, this is not easy to pivot. You have a tough candidate. Folks, when I have covered so many of these races, and sometimes for instance, I'll give you an example. The question always becomes, and it's not the chicken or the egg, but many times it's, who is the problem, the campaign, or is the problem the candidate? And I'll give you an example. Right now, there was, the past couple of years, the question was, is the problem Governor McKee, or is the problem the people that he has around him? And that we've learned is he's the problem, and he doesn't improve his situation by virtue of who he surrounds himself with. But there are people that sometimes that they could be a good candidate, they run a lousy campaign, and that can happen sometimes. And you see different people. There are people that can be very difficult and can't run a campaign. I've spoken to over the years so many different people that have run campaigns, and many times they present the candidate with, here's what I think we should do, here's how we should portray ourselves, and it gets shot down, and then they lose. Conversely, I've interviewed people. I've had people run for office, and during the campaign, they say to me, what do you think of my commercials? And I won't say who, but one in particular, I said, I don't think it matches you. This particular campaign, it was a mayoral race for Providence, and it was a pretty negative, hard-hitting campaign, and it didn't match who the guy was. He's like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's, I'm not happy with it. Like, they're telling me this is what I have to do to win, but I'm kind of uncomfortable with it. And we lost. So it's got to match it. So what I'm interested to see in the next 3 weeks is if the Trump campaign, couple different things, if they can pivot, if they can get him out more, and if they can just highlight the differences between the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign. Because, first of all, Harris, Waltz, it's not even like, this is a total no-brainer. These people they're completely hell-bent on destroying the country. As much as Biden and some of these other people say, democracy's on the ballot, it goes beyond that. And what else? It's such a joke, democracy's on the ballot. So the vice president's coming in. There are going to be 3 labor leaders there to meet him. And it's all approved by, How is that democracy? David Cicilline would welcome in, new arrivals, and all they cared about was them voting and replacing regular people with them. How is that democracy? Right? Governor McKee, the only reason he's the governor is because Helena Foulkes started late, and then he had the unions ballot harvest for him. And so she won day of voting. The only reason Sabina Matos is lieutenant governor. Aaron Gukian, as I've said, he beat her day of voting. Aaron Gukian beat her in Warwick. We don't have a democracy. Seth Magaziner, this ballot harvesting that goes on in the state. That's not democracy. Democracy's on the ballot. We don't have a democracy. So there are governors, by the way, and I want to be very clear. There are governors that are ensuring that they have fair elections. The governor of Virginia is one of those people. Governor DeSantis is one of those people. The governor of Georgia, even though President Trump and I don't agree with him attacking him, they've made huge changes that way. Ohio has made changes that way. Florida, Ohio, Texas, Virginia, they've all made changes. New Hampshire, Governor Sununu, they run fair election. We don't have that. This is all, and they have the media brainwashed to think that there's no difference between voting in person and, the unions going into assisted living and nursing homes and forging the names of the people that are in there. And the fact that they're union nurses, they don't let a Republican candidate in. And that happened in the city of Warwick 2 years ago, where the Fung campaign couldn't get into any nursing homes or assisted living facilities in the city of Warwick. They couldn't get in. And the person that was in charge of that for the Fung campaign really wasn't the right person to deal with it. And he didn't know what to do about it. So they didn't do anything. And they got clobbered. Magaziner turned in 14,000 mail ballots. Fung turned in 4,000 mail ballots. So even though Magaziner lost day of voting, early voting was pretty much tied, and then Fung won day of voting, Magaziner is the congressman. Why? Ballot harvesting. Folks, this portion of the program, if you're listening on this Monday and you're having a problem with your foot or your ankle, I want you to remember my friends at Greenville Foot and Ankle Specialists. If you've been having some type of problem with your feet, whether it is fracture, sprain, skin conditions, bunions, hammer toe, plantar fasciitis, anything like that, at Greenville Foot and Ankle Specialists, right in the Smithfield Medical Center, Route 5 in Smithfield. They take all health insurance. They have digital x-ray on site. Staff is phenomenal. Call them. Sometimes you can get a same-day appointment. 401-949-3220. 401-949-3220. Greenville Foot and Ankle Specialists. And I want you to remember, foot pain should not be ignored. And this is a personal question. Has your quality of life been impacted by your inability to walk distances because of a foot problem? I've had family members like that. And then it even limited their ability to travel because then they couldn't walk around when they got there. Folks, Greenville Foot and Ankle Specialists. And they specialize in custom foot inserts to alleviate painful, achy feet. Go to, they're 3 doctors, by the way. Doctors, not somebody that just works in a store selling you expensive inserts. Greenville Foot and Ankle Specialists. Call them today, 401-949-3220. Well, folks, good afternoon. You're listening to the John DePetro Show. It's AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. I don't know what the internal polls look like for the Trump campaign, but I think it's safe to say that you can't ignore that it's been a change. The Democrat Party seemed to be very relieved that Biden is not the nominee. And I'm not convinced, the vice president right now is not doing any interviews. And I want to come back to why would she? If they're seeing the polls are rising and she's out at a rally And someone posted, here she is at a rally saying this, and then she's at a rally and she's basically saying the same thing. I, I mean, that there's nothing new there. They do that all the time. She is like a chameleon. She's kind of morphing out of a lot of her positions. This is someone, the vice president. She wanted to defund ICE. She wanted to defund the police. She has totally failed at the border. But none of that matters unless you show that she is. In 2004, the Bush campaign, that was a pretty good campaign against John Kerry, where they showed him as a flip-flopper and they showed him windsurfing. I still remember the ad. And they showed that he went with the wind this way and then he went with the wind that way. And they portrayed him pretty well as a flip-flopper. Harris is the same way. She hasn't been defined. And you can't just define her as she's crazy. And as much as a lot of people, and I want to be very clear, I know when the Trump people, when they say she's liberal or she's progressive, and everyone, boos and so forth. But I think you have to map out, what does that really mean? What it means is it shows what her policies are and what that has then caused. I think that that's a really important aspect of this thing, because I'm telling you right now, I mean, these two people, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, especially in places like where we are, the Northeast, and I mean Rhode Island, Massachusetts. How much would a Harris-Walz presidency, would that fundamentally change Texas? I don't. Where you have strong states and strong governors, I mean, it would impact them, but we would absolutely, it would just be complete anarchy, because right now, the policies that McKee has are a complete failure. I mean, no one can look at what's going on with McKee Matos and come away saying that this is a successful, regime that is running the state right now. It's actually the opposite. Right now, our state, and the same thing, by the way, goes for Massachusetts under Healey. The fact that you're kicking out veterans and the needy because all these migrants come flying in is absurd. So I come back to, it's so much about the policies, and the President Trump has this remarkable opportunity that he could, if they could pull it off, if you could have President Trump in the White House, and then you could have Republicans control the House and the Senate, it would be a remarkable opportunity to put the country in the right direction. But none of that happens if you don't have the White House. None of it happens if you don't have the White House. Folks, this portion of our program, I want to remind you about Andrew at Royal Exteriors. Call them today, 401-533-9989. Roofing or siding, Royal Exteriors. Call them for a free estimate, 401-533-9989. With Royal Exteriors, where the customer is always king or queen, if you've been thinking of getting a new roof or siding, Andrew at Royal Exteriors, give them a chance to pitch your business. Where the customer is always king or queen, call them, 401-533-9989, 401-533-9989 for Royal Exteriors. Well, folks, good afternoon. You're listening to the John DePetro Show. It's AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. Remember, you can always listen online at our website, which is depetro.com. So I think what we need to watch over the next, over the next couple of days is going to be, or this week, because then make no mistake about it, Harris, they're going to get so much free coverage they're going to get a lot of coverage next week with the Democrat National Convention in Chicago. And I also, there's just there's several things about it. Number one, the Trump campaign and the Republicans, you can't complain about the press. We know the press is going to be unfair. You know the press is going to be unfair. You know Harris. Harris, you're going to hear people saying she's not doing any interviews. That's correct. She's not doing any interviews. They're not going to do any interviews until they start to see their numbers either flatline or even go down. President Trump would like 3 debates with her. I think that would be great. She's not agreeing to 3 debates right now. I believe the path that I'm hoping that the Trump campaign is going to go on, I hope it's going to be one where they are laying out their policy differences. And because now the battle is for undecided independent voters. And the undecided independent voters, that pool of voters, they're not going to, it's not going to stay like that. It's not going to stay like that forever. So the more that, number one, and I get that Biden is still the president. Biden is still the president, and he claims he's going to be out on the campaign trail for her. But I think what they need to do, I believe, would be to highlight that the Biden policies are her policies. There's too much talk right now about J.D. Vance, and there's too much talk about his, the country being run by childless cat people. I mean, I understand what he was saying, which is there should be more benefits for people that have children, and there are too many people that are in office who don't have children, so they're not impacted. I've often, you look at a good example of that is how much did David Cicilline really care about the Providence schools as mayor? He didn't care about the Providence schools. He wasn't married. He didn't have any children. He didn't care about the Providence schools. That's more than obvious. He didn't do anything to improve the Providence schools. So I think what J.D. Vance was trying to say is, you need people that are engaged. One of the reasons why Gina Raimondo was trying to improve the Providence schools is she lived in Providence and was surrounded by people that complained about the Providence public schools. So I think what J.D. Vance was trying to say, you need politicians that have some skin in the game, that care about things that affect families, not just and you can't have people that don't care. It didn't come out that great, and they've really framed them with them. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to break for the 1 o'clock news. Yes, we will be doing Road Patrol later. And then next hour, Politics This Week. You're going to hear it with Justin Katz, managing editor of AnchorRising.com. It's John DePietro on this Monday. We're going to break for the 1 o'clock news. Another full hour to go of the John DePietro Show.